Jenny had always been the ideal mother. From the moment her son, Max, was born, she dedicated herself to raising him right. Her house was always filled with love, laughter, and the warmth of a mother who would do anything for her children. It wasn't just Max. Lily, her daughter, also grew up in the same nurturing environment where Jenny went above and beyond to make sure they never went without. From the start, Jenny didn't mind the sacrifices. She loved seeing her children happy, and she took pride in knowing they were well cared for. For years, she worked hard at a job she didn't love, saving every penny for her kids' future. She paid for their education, ensured they had the best clothes and toys, and when they were older, even helped with things like rent and car payments. But as the years passed, Jenny began to notice a shift. The endless phone calls asking for money became more frequent, and the gratitude she once received was replaced by subtle expectations. It wasn't that Max and Lily were ungrateful, at least not overtly. It was just that Jenny had become so involved in their lives that she forgot to live her own. In her heart, Jenny had always hoped for a quiet, peaceful retirement. She dreamed of traveling, taking up hobbies, and spending more time with friends. But every time she tried to put money aside for herself, there was a new emergency in Max or Lily's life, and she was there, like clockwork, to fix it. A new car for Max? She paid. Rent for Lily's apartment? Done. Yet, every time Jenny made a sacrifice, she felt herself growing smaller, like she was being consumed by the weight of her own kindness. Now, nearing her 60s, Jenny looked at her bank account, where she had poured all her savings, and realized that her dream of retirement was fading. She had taken money out of her pension to cover Max's wedding expenses, to buy the dress Lily had always wanted, to pay for their lives. And for what? For a family that barely even noticed the sacrifices anymore? It wasn't that Jenny resented her children, far from it. But there came a point when she began to ask herself, what about me? Jenny's birthday was always a special day for her. It wasn't just about the cake or the gifts. It was a reminder of the love she had poured into her family over the years. But this year, something was different. Max and Lily had both promised to visit her on her birthday, and Jenny had spent the entire week preparing for their arrival. She'd cleaned the house, baked her famous apple pie, and even planned a little family gathering. The thought of seeing her children together again, laughing and sharing stories, made her heart swell. But as the hours passed, Jenny felt the familiar, sinking feeling creeping in. First, there was no call from Max. Then, when Lily finally texted, it was just a quick, "Happy birthday, Mom. I'm really busy with work today. Let's catch up later." The day dragged on in silence. Jenny sat alone at her kitchen table, the pie untouched, the party hacks still in their packaging. Her phone didn't buzz. No one was coming. The worst part was that she had grown so accustomed to this neglect that it didn't even surprise her. Her children had both settled into their own lives, and it seemed that Jenny was no longer central to their world. That night when she climbed into bed, Jenny couldn't hold back the tears. She wasn't crying because she was sad. It was something deeper, more painful. She was grieving the relationship she thought she had with her children. The constant giving, the self-sacrifice, the endless helping. It had all been for this, to be overlooked, neglected, and forgotten. For years, Jenny had made excuses for them. "They're just busy, they're young, they don't realize how much I do for them," she would think. But this time, there was no excuse. She realized she had been pouring her energy into a one-sided relationship, expecting love and gratitude that never came. The next day, her phone rang. It was Max. Her heart skipped, but she quickly reminded herself that this was always the pattern. He would call when he needed something. "Mom, I was thinking about getting a new car, but I can't afford the down payment right now. Can you help me out?" Her stomach dropped.
She had known this call was coming, but the sharpness of the request still hit her like a slap. A new car? After everything I've done for you, you can't even acknowledge that it's my birthday? The thought burned through her mind. She was silent for a moment, trying to steady her emotions. She had always been there for him, never questioning his needs. She had sacrificed her own comfort, dipping into savings that should have been for her future, for his future. But now the reality of her situation was becoming clear. She had been the one paying the price for their lives, while they lived as though she would always be there to fix everything. "I can't, Max," she said, her voice trembling slightly, but with the quiet strength she didn't know she had. "I've been helping you out for years, and I'm afraid I can't keep doing it. I need to start thinking about myself." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Mom, you're being unreasonable," Max finally said, his tone defensive. "I'm your son. You're supposed to help me." Jenny's chest tightened at the words. She had heard them so many times before, but now they felt different. The word supposed echoed in her mind, as if being a mother automatically meant that she was meant to sacrifice everything for her children without ever questioning the cost. "No," Jenny replied firmly. "Being a mother doesn't mean giving up everything. I've done more than enough. It's time for you to learn to stand on your own."
That conversation with Max marked the turning point for Jenny. She felt a sense of power rising within her, a strength she had never given herself permission to tap into before. For so long, she had thought that being a good mother meant being endlessly available, emotionally, financially, and physically. But now she saw the truth. She had been enabling her children's dependence on her, and in doing so, she had lost herself. Jenny sat down with a cup of tea that afternoon, reflecting on the years she had spent supporting her children. How much had I given? How much had I lost in return? Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the pictures of family vacations, birthdays, and holidays that had been full of smiles. But those smiles were now just a memory, faded by the passage of time. She had always believed that by being the provider, she was fulfilling her role as a mother. She didn't ask for anything in return. All she wanted was their love. But now Jenny realized she had been sacrificing her own well-being for a love that was based on transactions rather than true affection. The thought hit her like a revelation. She hadn't just been helping them, she had been funding their lives, buying their love with money and endless sacrifices. And in return, they had offered her nothing but indifference. Jenny grabbed a notebook and began to write down her thoughts. She listed all the ways she had supported them over the years: tuition payments, car loans, wedding expenses, even small gifts. It added up to a staggering amount, more than $60,000. All of it had come from her savings, from the money she had put aside for her retirement. She felt sick to her stomach when she saw the number on the page. As the realization hit her, Jenny knew what she had to do. She had been running on empty for so long, putting her children's needs before her own. It was time to stop. It was time to take control of her own life again. She picked up her phone and started drafting a message to Lily, her daughter. She knew Lily would be upset, but Jenny couldn't keep living for her. She needed her life back. Jenny's decision to stop financially supporting her children was not an easy one, but it was a necessary one. After Max's call, she felt a strange sense of relief. There was a weight on her shoulders that had been lifted, and for the first time in years, Jenny felt like she could breathe again. However, this newfound peace was soon overshadowed by the storm that followed. Max didn't take the news well. The next day, he called again, his voice filled with frustration. "Mom, this is ridiculous," he said. "You're just going to stop helping us? After everything we've been through together?" Jenny took a deep breath before responding. She had anticipated this reaction, but that didn't make it any easier to hear. "Max, I've helped you for years. I've given you everything I could, but I've been doing this for so long that I've forgotten who I am. It's time for you to learn to stand on your own." Max went silent for a moment.
then let out an exasperated sigh. "So what now? You're just going to turn your back on us when we need you the most?" "I'm not turning my back on you, Lily. I'm just setting boundaries. You're capable of doing things for yourselves now. You don't need me to fix everything for you." The conversation ended with Max hanging up in anger, but Jenny remained calm. She knew it was going to be difficult, but she had already made up her mind. It was time to stop being the bank, the fixer, and the emotional support that had held everyone together for so long. Later that day, Lily called. She was quieter than Max had been, but the sense of entitlement in her voice was clear. "Mom, I don't understand why you're doing this. You've always been there for me. You've always helped me when I needed it. Now you're just abandoning us?" Jenny sat down at the kitchen table, her heart heavy but resolute. "I'm not abandoning you, Lily. I just can't keep giving without getting anything back. I need to think about my own future for once." Lily's voice wavered. "You're being selfish. How can you do this to us?" "I'm doing this for me, Lily. I've been helping you for years, and I've put my own life on hold. It's time I started living for myself." Lily fell silent, and the call ended soon after. Jenny felt a pang of guilt, but also a sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, she wasn't concerned about how her children would react to her choices. She was concerned about her own well-being. The days that followed were filled with tension. Max and Lily didn't call her as often they used to. They didn't check in on her like they used to. Jenny knew they were angry, but she also knew that they had to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. She couldn't continue being their financial crutch.
As the weeks passed, Jenny found herself adjusting to her new life. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt, but she knew she had made the right decision. The first few days without calls from Max or Lily were strange, almost eerie. But slowly, Jenny began to appreciate the peace. She decided to take a trip, something she had been putting off for years. She had always wanted to visit the coast, spend time by the ocean, and breathe in the fresh air. Now, with no financial obligations hanging over her, she booked a flight to a small coastal town where she could relax and reflect. The trip was life-changing. For the first time in years, Jenny wasn't worrying about whether Max's rent was paid or if Lily had enough money for groceries. She spent her days walking along the beach, reading books she had been meaning to catch up on, and taking long, quiet naps. The peace was overwhelming in the best way. During her time away, Jenny began to reconnect with herself. She thought about the woman she used to be, before motherhood, before financial obligations, before all the sacrifices. She realized that she had lost touch with the things that once brought her joy. She used to love painting, but it had been years since she picked up a brush. She had given up so many hobbies and interests to focus on her children. Jenny returned home with a new sense of purpose. She signed up for painting classes, something she had always wanted to do but never found the time for. She also joined a book club and started volunteering at the local animal shelter. The more she immersed herself in activities she loved, the more she realized how much of herself she had given up over the years. It was during one of her painting classes that she met people who genuinely appreciated her for who she was, not for what she could provide. These new friends, people from different walks of life, began to fill the space that Max and Lily once occupied. They didn't ask for anything in return, and their friendship was based on shared interests, not financial support. Months passed, and Jenny settled into her new routine. She felt lighter, happier, and more fulfilled than she had in years. But then, one evening, her phone rang. It was Max. "I've been thinking," Max said, his voice quieter than usual. "Mom, I know I was upset when you told me you wouldn't help me anymore, but I've been going through a lot, and I want to apologize for how I acted." Jenny felt a flutter in her chest. She wasn't sure how to react. Max had apologized, but that didn't change everything that had happened before.
It didn't undo the years of sacrifice or the realization that he had taken her love and support for granted. "I'm glad you're taking responsibility for your actions, Max," Ginny replied calmly, "but I need you to understand that I'm not going to go back to how things were. I'm done being your financial safety net." Max sighed. "I get it, Mom, but I really need you right now. I'm trying to make things right. Can you help me with just one thing?" Jenny paused. She wasn't sure if she could trust herself to say no again, but she knew she couldn't go back to enabling him. "No, Max, I can't help you anymore. You need to learn to stand on your own." The conversation ended abruptly. Ginny felt a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and even guilt. But she also knew that this was part of the process. Max would have to learn to live independently, just as she had. Months passed and Jenny settled into her new routine. She felt lighter, happier, and more fulfilled than she had in years. But then, one evening, her phone rang. It was Max. "I've been thinking," Max said, his voice quieter than usual. "Mom, I know I was upset when you told me you wouldn't help me anymore, but I've been going through a lot, and I want to apologize for how I acted." Jenny felt a flutter in her chest. She wasn't sure how to react. Max had apologized, but that didn't change everything that had happened before. It didn't undo the years of sacrifice or the realization that he had taken her love and support for granted. "I'm glad you're taking responsibility for your actions, Max," Ginny replied calmly, "but I need you to understand that I'm not going to go back to how things were. I'm done being your financial safety net." Max sighed. "I get it, Mom, but I really need you right now. I'm trying to make things right. Can you help me with just one thing?" Jenny paused. She wasn't sure if she could trust herself to say no again, but she knew she couldn't go back to enabling him. "No, Max, I can't help you anymore. You need to learn to stand on your own." The conversation ended abruptly. Ginny felt a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and even guilt. But she also knew that this was part of the process. Max would have to learn to live independently, just as she had. As the months continued, Ginny's relationship with Max and Lily shifted. They didn't completely understand her decision, but they began to respect it. Ginny continued to live her life for herself, enjoying the hobby she had rediscovered and the friendships she had built. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, especially when her children asked for help again. But Ginny remained firm in her decision. She had given enough, and now it was time for her to receive something in return. Not money, but love, respect, and freedom. Ginny's life was no longer defined by her role as a provider. She had reclaimed her sense of self, and it felt like she had finally found the peace she had been searching for all these years. Months had passed since Jenny had made the difficult decision to stop financially supporting her children. She had found peace in her new life, but there were still moments when doubt crept in. She wondered if Max and Lily were truly okay, if they resented her for abandoning them, and if her decision was ultimately selfish. But in her heart, Jenny knew that this was the best choice. She was no longer weighed down by guilt or the need to prove her love through sacrifice. She had become her own person again, and while it hadn't been easy, it had been necessary. One evening, as Jenny sat at her kitchen table enjoying a cup of tea, her phone rang. It was Lily. Jenny had been bracing herself for this call. It had been weeks since she last heard from her daughter. "Mom," Lily said, her voice softer than it had been during their last conversation, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I know I've been selfish and I'm sorry." Jenny felt a rush of conflicting emotions. She wasn't sure how to react. She had always wanted to hear these words, but now that they were finally spoken, they felt bittersweet.
"I'm glad to hear that, Lily," Jenny said carefully. "But I need you to understand something. I'm not going to go back to how things were. I can't. I've spent so many years trying to make up for everything, but it's time for me to live my life." Lily fell silent for a moment, as though absorbing the weight of her mother's words. Jenny could hear her soft breathing on the other end of the line. "Mom, I think I've been blind," Lily continued, a trace of emotion in her voice. "I took you for granted, and I didn't see all the things you did for us. You were always there, and I didn't realize how much it cost you. But I understand now. I know I've hurt you." Jenny's heart softened, but she remained firm. "I'm not angry, Lily. I just want to make sure you understand that I'm not here to be a bank. I'm here to be your mother, but I need respect. I need boundaries." "I understand," Lily replied quietly. "I'll figure things out, Mom. I promise." For the first time in a long while, Jenny felt a sense of closure. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was the beginning of a new chapter. She had always believed that her children would come to appreciate her sacrifices, but now she realized that their understanding would take time. She didn't need their validation anymore. She had her own life to live. With the weight of her children's expectations lifted, Jenny found herself thriving in a way she hadn't expected. She threw herself into her new hobbies, painting, gardening, and volunteering, and began to travel more. She took a month-long trip to Europe, visiting countries she had always dreamed of seeing, but had never had the chance to explore. In Paris, Jenny wandered the cobbled streets, admiring the art and culture that surrounded her. She visited museums, sat at sidewalk cafes, and took in the beauty of the world without the constant worry of what her children needed. It was as though she was finally seeing life for what it truly was, full of possibilities, full of experiences to be embraced. Jenny returned home with a renewed sense of self. She was no longer just a mother, a caretaker, or provider. She was Jenny, a woman with her own dreams and ambitions. Her relationship with Max and Lily remained distant, but she had peace. She no longer felt obligated to fix their problems or sacrifice her own happiness for their comfort. She loved them, but she loved herself more now. As Jenny sat in her garden one evening, sipping a glass of wine, she reflected on how far she had come. She had spent so many years thinking that love meant sacrifice, that being a good mother meant giving up everything. But now she knew that true love didn't come with a price tag. It wasn't measured by what you could give, but by what you could share, without losing yourself in the process. 6 months after her trip to Europe, Jenny sold her large house and moved into a cozy apartment in the city center. It was smaller, but it felt like a fresh start. She filled it with light, color, and furniture that reflected her own tastes, not the ones her children had picked for her. Jenny's new home was her sanctuary. She continued to paint and even started exhibiting some of her work at local galleries. She had found her voice again, and it was loud and clear. She didn't need anyone's approval to live her life. She had earned every inch of freedom she had now, and she was determined to make the most of it. Her friends, new and old, became her support system. They didn't ask for anything, but they were there for her when she needed them. They celebrated her accomplishments and listened to her stories. Jenny had found a community of people who appreciated her for who she was, not what she could give them. She also continued to speak to her children, but on her own terms. Max called her occasionally, and although the relationship was strained, there was a quiet understanding between them. He had begun to take responsibility for his life, but it was clear that he still struggled to fully embrace independence. Lily, on the other hand, had started her own business and was slowly becoming more self-sufficient. While Jenny still didn't have the close relationship she once dreamed of, she was content. She had done her part. It was now up to her children to forge their own paths.
One evening, as Jenny sat on her balcony watching the sunset, she thought back to her younger self, the woman who had given everything for the people she loved. She realized that while her love for her children had never wavered, it had been built on a foundation of giving without limit. Now she had learned the most valuable lesson of all. True love never has a price, and freedom is never too expensive. Jenny wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living. She had reclaimed her life, her independence, and her peace of mind. It was a journey that had cost her a lot, emotionally, financially, and mentally, but it had also given her everything she had been searching for. For the first time in years, Jenny could say with certainty, "I am enough, and I am worthy of a love that doesn't ask for everything in return."